It's 2:01, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are so thrilled to be here with Desmarais Morse, Kelly Dunn, and Matt Fleck. They are presenting on comprehensive school counseling. Just some reminders before we get started. First, if you are tweeting or sharing, we would love you to hashtag virtually different in your tweets so that those of our attendees who are following along on Twitter can experience a little bit of the conference flavor. And if you need the live transcripts, those are going on. The captions should be down at the bottom. If you want to turn those off, toggle them on or off, you can do that by clicking the CC button in the Zoom interface. Most of you will be in the Whova conference platform with Zoom kind of inset in the middle. So in that Zoom space, there's a CC at the bottom. You can turn them off if they're distracting. You can also like click and drag and move them around, I think, if you need them in a different spot. And then if we're going to participate in the chat and Q&A and polls, we do ask that you do that in the Whova side of things, because that will be archived for all of our participants who will watch this recording later. They will still be able to see the prompts and questions from the chat and any polls that were going on and participate in those. And if you are chatting in the Zoom space, I may try to pull that over to the Whova space just so that we've got that archived. I'll do my best to keep up with both of those. And then at the end of the session, don't forget to fill out that session survey. It's linked in the description in Whova. This shortened link is also available, and those capital letters do count in that shortened link. And this will give you an option to either put in that you need CEUs. I know for a session like this, you may need CEUs instead of PGPs, and we'll get those sent to you later through the information that you put in the survey. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Matt, Kelly, and Jan.
Well, thank you, Lena. We appreciate that. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very pleased that you've chosen our session. There's lots to choose from, and I hope that you've had a good conference so far. We're talking about comprehensive counseling today, and although that term has been around a long time, we hope we can make it a little bit more exciting and interesting for you today with what we've learned over the last couple of years. So this is me, Matt Fleck, from Inspire Success. It's a relatively new nonprofit based in Indiana, and we have been working with Gold Star programs in the past, with career and technical education, college and career readiness, and now with a new Ramp Ready program that we'll chat maybe briefly about or answer any questions about. Kelly Dunn is also with us. She is now a visiting professor, or visiting lecturer rather, at IUPUI. She's also a companion with me at Inspire Success. And Desmarais Morse from Goshen Middle School, where she has been a counselor for many years and former Indiana School Counselor of the Year. So we are pleased to have Jan with us as well. Our objectives today, we're going to go over some of the foundations of the Comprehensive School Counseling Program. You'll see this terminology quite a bit, CSCP. So when you see it, that's what we're referring to. We're going to spend a little bit of time, really about a chunk of time, talking about the ASCA National Model, because as you'll see, this is the predominant comprehensive school counseling model that's used around the country. And then Jan's going to give us maybe the most practical part of this whole presentation, her real world experiences with the ASCA National Model and with RAMP, which is the recognized ASCA Model Program, the award that many Indiana schools have received and lots of other schools around the country. So once again, thanks for joining us. So let me go over just a couple of basics, and I'm going to ask you to use the Whova chat for this question. What does comprehensive school counseling mean for you? Is it doing everything? Is it all the grade levels? Is it all of your students? Is it just those 3 domains of school counseling? Or is it just 2 maybe domains, or 1 domain? Or is it the multiple approaches or skills or abilities of a counselor? If you'll take a moment, just if you can find the Whova app and use I think it's the question area, type in, if you would, just a quick answer to this, and I'll try to see if I can see any of your answers as we go along. It's a question I think that I've had for a long time, and for many, many years, this has been the title of the national model. talking about comprehensive school counseling. So as we wait for your answers to that question, I'll tell you my take on it, and that is that it encompasses all of this. It is doing a lot of things, but probably not everything. And that's why we need a model, because as a counselor, whether you're elementary, middle, or high school or beyond, you are given so many plates to juggle. So having a model that is both comprehensive, but yet organized and helpful for your time is extremely important. What are the most common models? Well, Kelly and I have been very fortunate to be working with the Lilly Endowment and their Comprehensive Counseling Initiative. If you are a CCI school, give us a shout out in the chat or in the Whova app if you would. That's the CCI initiative. And in that initiative, we've been asking schools what model they are using. And these are the three most common responses. Most schools in this Comprehensive Counseling Initiative are using the ASCA National Model, or some Gold Star Redesigning School Counseling RSC combination. Some are using the standards for programs, for school counseling programs established by the state, which was what the Gold Star model was designed upon, or some sort of mix with multi-tiered systems of support, PBL, trauma-informed schools, etc. Lots of other models. If you have a chance and you are so inclined, drop us a line in the Whova app and tell us what model you use, because I think it's interesting for us to find out what you use. And it's a good way to be interactive in this session as well. But these are the most common models that we have seen. Let me ask, actually, I think you can actually open up your microphone. Is there anyone who's listening who would like to share audibly what model you're using right now? And just jump in if you would. I can see your names. I won't call anyone out. Well, you're very quiet, but that is very well behaved. So thank you. Again, from our data, these are the most common models. And I imagine most of you, maybe not a model right now, but maybe aspiring to have one of these models. So one thing I want to make sure that you know is that you can have a highly successful school counseling program without a comprehensive school counseling model. We'll just get that out of the way. I don't know if ASCA has ever said you have to have a model to be effective. I don't believe so. Again, you can have a very good model. Years ago, about 10 years ago, those of you who've been to the Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference, shout out to them. It's one of the great school counseling conferences. Carrie Dimmitt is one of the presenters there from Boston. And she has said that they did research years ago in Florida and found the most successful school counseling programs, and some of them that they identified as the most successful through a College Board survey did not have the ASCA National Model. Interestingly, though, they were engaged in some of the components of the model, but they didn't call it the ASCA National Model. So something that was kind of curious. My big question when I've been looking at models is, why should I spend the time to put together a comprehensive school counseling model? And this is the answer. It didn't come immediately to me, but this is really the answer. And I'll share with you as we go along why we've found this to be true. You can truly have a greater impact on student success, a measurable and expanded impact on student success by using a comprehensive counseling model. The data is out there. You can find lots more data, but here's just one set. Higher SAT scores for high school students compared to non-ramp schools, higher college enrollment, and higher percentage of students who deem themselves college and career ready. Now, this is just a North Carolina study. We've also seen results from the state of Indiana and from many other states. And even if it's sometimes incremental, there is proven data that having some sort of comprehensive counseling model, even some of the components, not even the whole ramp or the whole national model, can have a greater impact on student success. I think one of the best reasons to have a model is that, well, you're going to ultimately get more time. And the way that you get more time is by increasing administrator support and buy-in. That's just one of the ways that the model allows you to do this. All of our comprehensive counseling initiative schools have attested to this. In fact, here's one quote from this last year. It was a school counselor in the Comprehensive Counseling Initiative, and she was working on the national model, and just said involving our administrator at the very beginning of the grant in great ways helped us secure more time for direct services to our students. How many of you went to the Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference out in San Diego back in 2016 or 17 when the initiative was giving out planning grants? More people have told me, when I took my administrator to that conference, I have had greater support and buy-in and ultimately more time to work with my students. Plus, I think it's because administrators better understand what you do, how you make a positive, measurable impact on student success. It may sound simple, but it is a powerful way to get more time to work with your students. The other good advantage of having a model is you're going to get more community support and buy-in. This is really true. Communities also want to know what school counselors do and how you're impacting student success. And it's a proactive way to counter any potential resistance. I don't know how many of you have read, it's just occurred in the last month. And in fact, I believe it was yesterday, our Indiana State Attorney General came out with a note talking about potentially negative effects of social emotional learning. And so in a very proactive way, having a model allows your community to be engaged in what you're doing so that they don't think that you're doing something to change the mindsets of kids in some negative way or control them in some way or give some political standing to them in some way. But we've heard from a lot of counselors over time who've said, how do I resist? We have some parents who are resisting what we're doing. And I said, do you have an advisory council? And they said, no, we don't. And I said, well, it may be too late now, but that's definitely something to do. Ultimately, a comprehensive counseling model, it's a nice award. It's a great thing to check off the list. Hopefully your administrator values it, but ultimately what it results in for you is more time and more time to work with students. And that's what counselors tell us they need most of all. It reduces non-counseling tasks and duties. It allows you to have time eventually for small groups, as well as more one-on-one with students. And it's a connection. It's a way to connect with students. Now, I give you this truth. It does take time to secure more time. So you do have to collect data. I know that's not always popular and it's not quick or easy, but there are ways that we can walk you through the national model in very simple ways to allow you to implement a model over time. Realistically, adopting a comprehensive school counseling model is one of the most consistent and effective ways to get more time, greater buy-in, and improve student success. Kelly and I have both been at the state level as school counseling specialists for the state of Indiana, and a lot of times counselors call us or email us and say, how can we get these things, time, buy-in, and how can we expand our success? And one of the most consistent and effective ways to do that is through a comprehensive counseling model. Okay, I'm off the preaching. Now let's turn to some more details of the ASCA National Model with Kelly Dunn.
Great. I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Let's see.
If you need me to use mine, Kelly, I can do that.
Yeah, do you mind? For some reason, mine is not cooperating.
Okay, sure. Let me just share
Thanks,
my
Matt.
screen. Yeah, no problem. Share my screen here. There you go.
Great, thanks. So Matt already talked a bit about the purpose of comprehensive school counseling, and ASCA would say the same thing as far as the purpose of the national model. It's really allows you as a school counselor to do more school counseling, to do what you need to do. And it's especially important when you have a larger caseload, when you have a lot of students to serve. The model really gives you the tools to take those non-counseling related things, those tasks or extra duties, take those off of your plate so that you can actually do the counseling activities and strategies and activities that you really need to do that are really a part of school counseling. Next slide. So just some clarification. There's the ASCA National Model, which you see here, and that is a framework. Like Matt was explaining about comprehensive school counseling, it's how you organize and deliver your school counseling program. So it is an organizational system, it gives you tools, and it helps you keep on task. RAMP, which you probably have heard about, is an award. RAMP stands for Recognized ASCA Model Program, and it's an award that ASCA gives to schools who are implementing comprehensive school counseling programs based on the ASCA National Model and who have been implementing them for probably at least 3 years is what ASCA recommends. And then schools would apply to get recognized for implementing that model fully in their schools. So just some clarification, you might hear ASCA National Model and RAMP used interchangeably, but they're really two different things that we're talking about. One's a framework and one's an award. So ASCA, the national model, has been around since 2003, and we've gone through some changes over time, and we are now on the 4th edition. It was just released actually not that long ago. ASCA always makes available resources to help you as a school counselor learn what's in the model, implement the model. They have resources on their website, as you see here. They have examples of templates that they use, different materials that you can use. They also have books. So here you see the red book, as I call it, and that's actually the book that outlines the entire model. They also have another book that came out a little later, a little more recently, and it's the blue book, and that is an actual implementation guide to help you implement your program. So taking a look at the model, it's really just 4 components or 4 pieces, which you see here in the diamond. So if you notice, they're all verbs, they're all actions that we do. We define our program, we deliver the services that we deliver to students, and we manage our program, and then we assess, or we get results for our program. So we're going to take a look at each one of these different components. We're going to start with define. So ASCA has us define our school counseling programs with 3 things. They're ethical standards. Those are, of course, the ASCA National Model, or the ASCA standards for school counselors, the ethical standards, how we need to behave as school counselors. There are standards for students, what they call the mindsets and behavior. So that's what we as counselors help students attain. We help them learn, have that knowledge, that skill, those beliefs. And then finally, school counselor standards. Those are for us as school counselors and even counselors in training. So what counselors or soon-to-be counselors should know and learn and understand when they're entering the field. So the programs are defined by those 3 sets of standards. Deliver is the next section of the diamond, and delivery is really what you think of when you think of school counseling. So those are the services that we deliver to students and on behalf of students. So you'll see that they're direct student services. It's what you normally think of. Classroom instruction, doing classroom lessons, large group presentations. Counseling, of course, that would be individual one-on-one counseling with students or small group counseling. And then what ASCA calls advisement and appraisal, and that's really advising, so college and career advising, or even scheduling with students, helping students come up with a course plan. And assessment would be appraisal. So when you think of assessment, it's not really if you were test coordinator of your building, because that's more of an administrative test or task. So assessment really are the assessments that we do as school counselors. So think about career interest inventories, maybe the strong interest inventory, or even things like the Vanderbilt or a Connors that you might use when doing appraisal or assessment of students. Then looking at indirect student services, those are the things that we do on behalf of students. So we consult with others, teachers, parents, for example, collaborate with teachers, other student services personnel in the building, and then refer. And of course, that when students' needs maybe exceed what we deliver through the school counseling program, then that's when we would refer students and families to outside services, community mental health, etc. So the next section of the diamond is managing our program. And these are the tasks that help us organize and deliver and do what we need to do. It keeps us on track, keeps our programs organized. We set goals for the year every year, and those are based on student outcomes. We create action plans or outline really what we're going to do, those lessons we're going to deliver, those large group presentations and small groups. And then calendars keep us on task. They actually then communicate to us and to everyone else when we're going to do all these things, when we're going to have those, whatever's on our action plan, when we're going to actually deliver it. And then we share that information, as Matt referred to. We keep everyone involved, all of our stakeholders. So we have an advisory council that we meet with at least twice a year that advises us, gives us feedback on the counseling program, and they can also be advocates for us. And same with our administrators. So every year at the start of the school year, we have an administrative conference with our principal to go over our goals, what we're doing in our counseling program, so that they're on board as well. And we all come to an agreement on what we're doing as a school counseling program. And then finally, we keep track of our time, because that way we know how we're using our time, and if we need to make adjustments or maybe even negotiate for more time spent on those student services, either direct or indirect, we can do that by tracking and knowing exactly how we're spending our time. And finally, assessing our program. So that's really when we look at our results. So, I mentioned we set goals for the year. So we look at the end of the year and see, did we meet our goals? And we deliver lessons. We talked about doing classroom lessons in small groups. We look at those results. Did students learn what we intended for them to learn in those lessons or in those small groups? And then finally, we evaluate ourselves as school counselors. How did we do? We do a self-evaluation. So we're going to take a closer look at the managing and assessing our program, specifically about student outcome goals, because this is an area, I think it's a big piece of the ASCA National Model, but it's one that counselors always tend to really struggle with because we're talking about student outcomes. So ASCA defines the school counselor's role as designing and delivering school counseling programs that improve student outcomes. So what are student outcomes? So they focus on achievement, attendance, and discipline. Well, why those three areas? Well, research shows that better attendance improves academic achievement, and students who behave better at school are more likely to achieve. So ultimately, student achievement, or really student success, is our goal as school counselors. That's what we're working towards. Now, when we set student outcome goals every year, it's not a goal that doesn't encompass everything we do. It really is more of, this is a targeted area where we are going to focus a little bit more time and a little bit more energy in targeting specific needs that we've seen according to some of these outcomes, whether it's attendance or achievement or something with discipline. We still do everything else that we normally do, those classroom lessons that all students get, large group presentations, etc., that we might deliver maybe through advisory or in classroom lessons. We have a school counseling curriculum that we use, but the goals really help us target our work. So we set 2 goals for the year for ASCA, if you're doing the national model, and those goals help keep us, as I said, to be more efficient and more effective, because when we can target those needs, then we can prioritize where and how we're spending our time. So the goals could stay the same from year to year, depending on the results, or we might look every year, and we review our data every year to see, how do we do? Do we need to keep the goals that we have, or maybe we made some progress and now there's a different need, and we're going to target that. But again, either way, we revisit every year our student outcome data and look at where are there needs that we can target through setting goals. So where do we find this data? DOE actually has a website, inview.doe.in.gov, which you see here. And you can find all kinds of data, attendance, discipline, achievement there for your school corporation, and for your own building. But you can also use your own student information system data. So if you use PowerSchool, for example, you can pull information or data from there, or even what I call local data. So that might be information that you keep records, or your school nurse, for example, has records of students who come to the clinic regularly. All of that is considered student data that you can look at to get information to start targeting or setting your goals. So what are some examples of student outcomes? We talked about achievement, attendance, and discipline. So here's an example. So for achievement, it could be something like your standardized state test scores by grade level. Discipline could be suspensions, expulsions, but it could even be just office referrals for behavior issues. Attendance, I mentioned InView, DOE's website with school data. You can look up who's chronically absent, or the absenteeism rate, chronic absenteeism rate for your school. So those would all be examples of student outcome data that you could pull. So real quick, if I were to look at this, kindergarten through grade 1, sight word recognition benchmark scores, would you say that's achievement, attendance, or discipline data? If you want, you can drop that in the Q&A section here. And we'll just go ahead and move on, and I will let you know it's achievement. So a lot of times we think in elementary school, oh, it's so hard to think of, those student outcomes. Well, here's an example. That would be considered achievement data. So let's look at the next example. Bus behavior referrals. Again, what would that be? Achievement, attendance, or discipline? And if we look, exactly, Kristen's right, it's discipline data. So again, it doesn't have to necessarily be those big numbers, or like your suspension rate. It could be something as simple as bus behavior referrals, incidents on the bus that gets sent to the office. Let's do one more. Tardies. So again, what kind of data is that? Achievement, attendance, or discipline? What would you consider that? And again, you just drop it in the chat. Attendance, yes, thanks, Kristen. Absolutely, tardies. So again, we talked about the larger type of attendance data, but it could be simply students who are late to class. So those are some examples. So we're going to take a look at some outcomes to see if they really are outcomes or they're not. Now, if you go to the polls section here in the Whova app, you'll see some questions here. And we're going to go through those one by one. But if you want to go ahead and take a look, we're going to start with the very first question that you should hopefully see in the poll. And that was, can you go back, Matt? Sorry. So 25 classroom lessons taught. If that's participation data, it's not outcome data. So a lot of times in the past, we would think about, oh gosh, a goal could be about how many classroom lessons we deliver. That's not really an outcome. That's really more about counting how many students participated. So that's a different type of data. Let's go into the next example. So FAFSA completion. A lot of times, counseling programs might want to set goals around that. So would you say, and you can look in the poll and answer if you want, is that a student outcome? Is that an example that you could use as a piece of student outcome data for a goal? Yes or no? Let's take a look at the poll. And no, it is not outcome data. Yeah, believe it or not, that's actually participation data, because again, we're just collecting or counting how many students actually completed. We don't know that students are any different as a result of that. There's no outcome that we know of from just the fact that they completed the FAFSA. Let's take another look at another one. Students sent to the office for behavior. Is that a student outcome? What do you think? All right, let's take a look. It's actually outcome data So in elementary school, it's hard sometimes because, a lot of times we don't collect that kind of data. This would be considered missing instruction data. So think about it. If students are sent to the office for behavior, it's discipline, right? But in a way, it's also attendance because they are missing classroom instruction time. They are actually missing out. So that is truly a student outcome. All right, one more. So students using calming techniques and stress reduction strategies. And I know that's what a lot of counselors work on with students, but is that, if we were to measure that, is that a student outcome? All right, let's take a look. So no, it's not an achievement or attendance or discipline outcome. It could be participation, counting the number of students who use it or report that they use it, or it's even a mindset or behavior. It's a standard that we're addressing, but it's not an outcome. So think about it this way. If you teach students to use calming techniques and stress reduction strategies, it's going to lead to perhaps fewer days that they miss from school. So that would be an attendance outcome. That would be the outcome. Or fewer visits to the clinic, to the school nurse, more time in class. Again, that would be an outcome because that would be attendance. They're not missing class time. Maybe fewer fights, discipline, that's an outcome. Or finally, hopefully you would see improved test scores if they are able to reduce their level of stress. And that would be, again, those test scores would be an achievement outcome. So again, those are the outcomes you're working towards. The using calming techniques and stress reduction is actually a strategy or a skill you're teaching them in order to get to these bigger outcomes. So with the ASCA National Model, setting your goals, we look at the student outcome data, we see where there's a need, either in attendance, achievement, or discipline, and then we set SMART goals. So our goals are written as SMART goals, which I know everybody's familiar with. They're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So we're going to take a look at some right here. Here's one. So again, measurable and time-bound. So it's by the end of the school year. We're very specific who it is. 6th grade students who qualify for free and reduced lunch and who are failing one or more class. And look, it's not a huge number. We're talking about 25 students, and we're hoping to get it down to 15 students. But when you think about the percent change, if you go from 25 students to 15 students, that's actually a 40% decrease. So one of the things ASCA has you do is look at not just the numbers you're reducing, but what's the actual percent change? Because that 40%, that's a pretty powerful stat to share with your administrator and your advisory council. So when we set our goals, we also look at what's the percent change? What's the actual change that we're making? So let's look at another one. Here's a discipline one. So again, it's time-bound by the end of the year, it's specific. So it's 9th graders who have out-of-school suspensions, and we're hoping to reduce the number of suspensions for that particular student group from last year's number, which was 101, and we're hoping to get it down to 50. So again, that's a huge percent change, a 50% change from 101 down to the lower number. And then attendance, here's one. So we're looking at specifically those students who had 15 or more absences last year, and we're hoping that we'll only have 36. So we had 45 last year, we're hoping to have only 36 students this year. So again, that's a change of 20%. So again, doesn't sound like big numbers until you look at the percent change. So here's an example of a goal. You let me know if it's an actual goal or not. So we're saying by the end of the school year, the number of 7th grade students who know how to use their planners to organize their assignments is going to increase. We'd like to see an increase from 115 students last year who knew that to 135 students this year. Is this an example of a student outcome goal? Is it is it an actual goal, or is there something wrong with it? So yes or no, goal or not? Kristen says no. Anybody else? No real data. Anybody else? Any thoughts on that? All right. Well, Kristen's right. It's not a student outcome, right? So it's just them using their planner. So again, that's something we could teach them to do. It's a skill we could work on and address, but it's not an outcome. Maybe instead, what we are hoping is that by teaching them that skill, our actual goal, the outcome we really want, is that we're going to reduce the number of students who are failing a class. And that is the actual student outcome goal. So again, using the planner's strategy, the goal is to really decrease the number of students who are failing a class. Okay, one more. So here's an example. By the end of the school year, the school attendance rate is going to increase from 92.7% to 95%. What are your thoughts? Is that a good goal? Is it an actual outcome goal? Not really? Okay. Any other thoughts? All right. So let's take a look. So it's actually an outcome, okay? It's attendance, right? But you know what? It's really too big. It's really too broad. We really want to, it's better to focus on a more narrow group, or a more, I should say, specific group of students. So as you can see here, I looked at my data a little more closely, and I realized in my school that the students who are chronically absent, there was a larger percentage of our English learners who had more chronic absenteeism than compared to the rest of the school population. So that's really who I'm going to target. So the last thing I'll say about that is it's often easy to fall into thinking big, that we have to move the needle on these really big things like achievement score, test scores, or the whole school's attendance rate. But really, if we want to make an impact, it's best to start with a more targeted approach. It's important to remember, you know, we're in this for the long haul, and changes don't occur overnight. So when you think about it, when we have, you know, school reform or improvement movements happening, they usually just kind of get discarded after a few years, because when things don't change or improve immediately, people start to lose interest or give up. They just move on. So instead, the ASCA National Model, setting goals, you know, for your counseling program, you want to think of it as chipping away at smaller pieces of the bigger needs and strategically targeting key pieces of whatever it is you're working on, where you're going to see some success, and that way you're going to keep everyone motivated and keep everyone working on and keep everyone involved. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jan.
Hi. Just a little bit of information about me. I've been around the school counseling world for a pretty long time, graduated and got my first job in 1989. And when I went through my program, it was only 36 credit hours, and it was a very traditional model of school counseling. I moved 2 months before graduation from Massachusetts to the state of Maine, and in order to get licensed in Maine, I had to take 4 more classes and do another internship, because I had to meet the state requirements for licensure, which was a 48 credit hour class. It was very annoying and upsetting to me that I had to do that because I had just graduated. And one of the classes that I took that really I felt offended to take, it was called Intro to School Counseling. And I'm thinking, I just took this, you know, I just graduated and I'm taking intro class. And I will tell you that it was the best class, and it changed the direction of my work. Because I learned about something called developmental model of school counseling. And that eventually morphed into, I think, the ASCA National Model. But it talked about how you would have a large caseload and how you would be able to target more students and more of a comprehensive plan. So that just changed everything to me, and that helped me understand the importance of having something in place and a plan, and something that was more comprehensive in nature. You can go ahead and pull up the slides. I think Kelly was going to do the slides for me, so we'll just have you do that for me if you don't mind. Okay, so it says that Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a comprehensive school counseling program. I find that sometimes we feel as school counselors, because we're fixers, We feel we have to do everything at once, and we can't. It's just not possible. And so keep in mind that it takes time to do that. And as it says, the Coliseum was, it took about 7 or 8 years to build the Coliseum, and look how long it has lasted, right? So go ahead to the next slide, please. So just from my own experience, and I tend to call myself the queen of keep it complicated, and I can make things much more complicated than they need to be. I try to simplify things, and I have to remember that I have to take this one step or one brick at a time, because the process can seem overwhelming. Now, I know that there are some counselors who have said, I'm going to be a new school counselor and I'm going to go for ramp my first year. And I want to just say to you, if you're that kind of person, hang on a bit and develop and get your feet under you a little bit and develop your program. If you could go back a little bit, Matt, to that. Just give yourself the time that you need to build that foundation. Don't feel that you have to do everything at once. When we first looked at going toward ramp, we had to decide what was possible and what we could do this year. It takes 3 to 5 years. So what can we do this year that's part of the ramp process that will get us down the, take us down the road, but won't get us there at the end of the year. So we had to do that. So what can you ask yourself, break it down. What can you do this year? Can you just do the mission and vision? Maybe you create an advisory council. You look at data, you learn how to do data diving so that you can start practicing setting up annual goals. What might be a long range plan that you could find manageable and doable? And then, you know, if you're still learning, what might you become familiar with so that you can get better at the process in developing your comprehensive program? You can go to the next slide. So what are the benefits of going for ramp? And ramp is going to help you create that comprehensive model, or at least make it more solid is what it's going to do, because you're already working at getting your comprehensive program in place, and ramp is just solidifying that and taking yourself through all the steps that will get you into a really better spot. For my school, we received the Lilly grant that helped develop comprehensive school counseling, and for us that went over a 4-year period of time, and we did it as a county-wide collaborative. And it helps you create a culture. The why is to help create a culture of success for all students, not just some students. The old traditional model of counseling would be for some students. It elevates your own skills and knowledge. I have found, even I've been 30+ years in this profession and I am still learning. We've ramped 3 times, twice through Gold Star and once through this Lilly endeavor, and I still learn much in the process. And collaborating with key stakeholders. I think Kelly and Matt both touched on the fact that it helps you be more connected to your administrators understand your program better, and then there's more support and possibility for you to do what you really are trained to do and to target more students with what you're doing. Go ahead. And what's your how? I want to talk that use of data. If you're not trying to use data to assess and elevate your program, then you're missing the mark. I find that it's a difference between having an opinion and being able to share facts on how effective your program is. And one thing that I found for myself is I was feeling on a couple of different things that I was doing with my students, I was not feeling very successful. I don't know, I just didn't think it was going well. I didn't think the students were getting anything from it. And through pre and post testing that I did with the students, I found out how effective that it was. I was doing such a great job, actually, you know, that the students were really feeling changed. They loved what we had done. They felt that they had grown. They learned skills that they took away. And I would do what I used to think, but now I think. And that would just show me tremendous growth on my students. So that fact that you get from using data. Clear articulation and communication with stakeholders, and then that focused and intentional programming that you're doing, it helps you direct your program. Next slide. In addition, I'm going to go pretty fast because I know that we're getting close on time. In addition, it increases your ability to be proactive. I know Matt talked about that, and reactive, and I've heard through work with Trish Hatch and Hatching Results, they often talk about emergency rooms versus general practitioners in the school counseling world. And so many counselors, you might have a list of things you want to do the next day, but you come in and everybody else is controlling your time because you haven't set up your practice to be like a general practitioner. Emergency room takes everything that happens as it's happening, and general practitioner, you make appointments, you make plans, you have a schedule. So you're better able to be in control of your day instead of your day controlling you. I'm going to move on a couple of slides. You can read through the ramp benefits. That what I really want to get to you is the tips and tricks. I want you to know, if you're not a member of ASCA, I strongly encourage you to become a member. A lot of people feel that it's expensive, but honestly, it is resource rich, what it offers to you. I could not do my work without being a member because I have access to a network of school counselors and resources that are just tremendous. So I've listed there the ASCA National Model is a resource, the implementation guide. If you're going to go for RAMP, you need both of those checks. There's the RAMP scoring rubric that there's a link to for you, and I recommend you read through that, get familiar with that. And then finally, I can't see the bottom of the slide. Oh, the RAMP camp, which you can only access if you are a member of ASCA. Go ahead to the next slide. Absolutely read the books. I did not do this initially when I was beginning the RAMP process, and I found, like, gosh, I really understand this process a lot more when I actually read the material and the instructions. So please do the homework on that. There are resources there for you to access from ASCA. And then if you're going for RAMP, check and recheck, find proofreaders to check for clarity and detail, because everything that they ask you for, they expect you to have. And if they say they want no more than 250 words in a narrative, do not put 251 words. That's what they're looking for. And this is just another resource. This Facebook forum is called On the Road to RAMP. It's not an ASCA generated or ASCA sponsored resource, but it is loaded with certified RAMP reviewers and school counselors and counselor educators, and the portal designer is also on there. So if you have a question, you can go there and you can ask a question and get it answered, or you can email ASCA directly. I found that going through the RAMP process helped us advocate and just speak to our administrators about the work that we were doing and help us put that general practitioner model of school counseling in place. We're much more effective. We're able to see students in direct services. We've increased the amount of direct services to students we've been able to implement. We're actually doing what we're trained to do, and when you use the time tracker from ASCA, there's something that says non-school counseling duties, and we have reduced our non-school counseling duties almost to zero level. We don't have to do duties because they know that we're needed in the hallways and before school and after school with meetings for parents. So we're not doing duties. We don't do lunch duties. And there was one other thing I wanted to tell you. Oh, we do have to help with iLearn makeup just because we don't have the people power to do it. But that is tremendously changed, and we have lots of backup. But it makes our program better and it allows us to do the work that we want to be able to do. That's kind of wrapping up really quickly, and then it doesn't really leave a whole lot of time for questions.
I think, though, thanks, Jan. I do feel we have time for questions. If you would like, you can use the Whova app or put it in the chat. If you do have questions for Jan or Kelly or myself, we do appreciate you being with us. We're going to hang here for just a little bit. And Lena, if we need to wrap up, please let us know.
We have about 10 minutes until the end of the session. And I do want to say out loud while I have everybody here, don't forget to fill out that session evaluation form. It's in the discussion notes in the session notes in our Whova app, and I'll put it in the chat in both the Zoom and the Whova. What a fascinating exploration of the comprehensive school counseling. As someone outside of the counseling world, I was a school librarian for 15 years. Not only do I appreciate the work that you guys do as collaborative partners, but this was really fascinating.
So we do have one question, Matt, in the chat. Someone asked, what's the most important point of your comprehensive model? And it might, that might be just more of an opinion, but what would you say is the most important point or piece? Jan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Boy, that's a really difficult question because there are so many important points, but I would say the ability to work with our students in direct services has to be, that's what it's all about, right? And we used to spend so much time in indirect services and even in program management that for us to be able to be in front of our students in the classroom more, that's one of the things that we've increased rather than just meeting with students individually in our offices. We've really pushed hard to be able to be into the classroom or to develop lessons that teachers could teach, because there's so much that we want them to know in preparation for college and career, and also social emotional learning. So being able to do that direct service, I would think, is our main one.
Great. And then we have another question. If you have any tips, and this would be for Jan or Matt, for a new school counselor for this upcoming school year, where would you recommend a new counselor starts with this process? For either, making their program comprehensive, maybe aligning to the national model, or even if they're thinking down the road about RAMP.
Wow. I think if you're brand spanking new in a building, the first thing that you need to do is you need to get to know your staff, and you need to understand the culture of your school. That's what I think you need to do first, because you can't go in and expect to change something if you don't understand what it is and what exists in that time. I think we go in with great energy and enthusiasm initially, and sometimes we make errors because you learn about what school counseling is supposed to look like when you're in your training, and then you go into the real world and it's not always that way. There are a lot of schools that need a lot of work, and that's why having a comprehensive model is helpful. But I say get to know the culture of your school and the staff, and then spend time getting to know your students, and then piecemeal what you see through that ASCA National Model. Matt, do you have something you would like to offer with that?
Well, I was just going to ask you a follow-up question. What happens when your administrator changes? You work hard to get a principal engaged and supportive, and then they leave, which can happen frequently. What have you done in the past?
Well, that happens to us a lot in my building, and I just finished my 25th year there, and I can't tell you how many administrators I've had to train. Fortunately, we have a strong enough program that we're able to say, okay, this is how we do it, as opposed to them telling us this is how you're going to do it. So we get proactive, and we say, okay, I'm going to meet with a principal, and I'm going to explain to you how we approach our school counseling program, and this is how we can work together to benefit our students. So, and it's always, how is it going to benefit our students? And how am I going to, I always try to figure out, how am I going to support my administrator? If I can make my administrator look good, then that's going to benefit my program and enable me to do what I need to do. So if my administrator is reading a book, or the team leaders or administrative leaders are reading a book, I'm going to read that book too, because I want to know what they're talking about and thinking about. And I've done that several different times, and there have been things that I've done as a result of reading that book that they might not know I've read the book, but they go, oh, hey, thanks, that's exactly what we're hoping to do, so just trying to be proactive ahead of it, helping to educate the principal so that they know that we have an established program in place.
Yeah. I would have to say that one of the biggest struggles I've had with the ASCA National Model for the first part was that it had to focus, your outcome goal had to focus on either attendance, achievement, or discipline. And I do know that focus has probably been well received by your principals in the past, has it not, Jan?
Absolutely has. Because, we come in and we had a plan, and we would do our work, and everybody trusted us, and no one ever micromanaged us. But when we started looking at, we would think about, okay, what are we seeing as trends? And we would notice that it was, okay, our chronic absenteeism among certain populations was really high. So we wanted to address that, because we knew that was going on our school improvement plans. So if we could say, we're going to work on this, our administrator is saying, well, great, that's in our school improvement plan, so that's going to benefit us. Or for student achievement, all of it is so important, and that is going to make your principal look good, because it makes your school, it benefits your students and your school, right? So it increases the effectiveness of everybody in the building.
I have one more, but I'm going to wait. Kelly, are there any more questions? I don't see any. on my side.
No, I think you can go ahead and ask yours.
Okay. Sorry, Jan, I've got a lot of questions, but one is, what if you have other counselors in your building and one or more of them are reluctant and absolutely shut you down? No, we're not going to do it. We do not have the time. That may not have happened to you.
Oh no, I've had that experience. What I do is I have a very tight, I say a tight relationship. I have a working relationship with my administrators, and we as an administrative and school counseling team set out the goals for the year. And if our principals are aware of what we're working toward and our school counselors are reluctant, it's our administrators who address that, right? And it's we're not going to get anybody in trouble, but I will continue to build into those people, because I find that some of it is just about fear. They don't know how to do something. Maybe they're not comfortable in the classroom. Maybe they've not. I was a classroom teacher for a couple of years before I got into school counseling, so I'm not afraid of that, but other people have some fears. So talking about that, being open about it. I'm one who likes to address the elephant in the living room, because once you're having these difficult conversations, you can move past that. So we would have those tough conversations, and sometimes it was, they didn't like something that I was doing, and I had to listen to that, because maybe there were some course corrections I needed to make to support my team, and maybe they just weren't ready. So I have to make sure, I'm department head, but I have to make sure that those people are ready. So if they're at different levels, what can we get them to do at the level they're comfortable at, and then how can I push them out of the nest just a little bit more?
Yeah.
But I keep plugging. Sometimes it's very frustrating.
Yeah, it sounds very much like how we work with reluctant students. So
yep, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Keep at it.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're right at the couple of minutes left. Lena, we'll turn it back to you. Thanks again, everyone. And don't forget to click on the session evaluation. Lena, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here, and thank you for attending this session live. If you're watching this recorded, you may also fill out the survey linked in the session description. Those PGPs or CEUs are available for you. Thank you, Jan, Matt, Kelly. We really appreciate you being part of the Keep Indiana Learning Summer Conference.
Thank you.
Thanks.